Welcome back, everybody, to the Coming Out series on the Little Less Fear podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lino Martinez. Today, I'm interviewing MAK at MAK underscore owns underscore a underscore PC. That's her handle on Instagram. MAK, thank you so much for being vulnerable, being open, being yourself, and for all the love that you're bringing here to my show. Thank you so much. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. Also, my pronouns are either they, them, or he, him.
Oh, okay, great, great. So what, so either they, them, why one over the other? I guess
Both
why,
of them.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, both of them. I've been going by they, them for about since 2018, 2017. I'm slowly going into transitioning to he, him, but it's still dipping my toes in the water in the kiddie pool side because I present such a femme body. So it's still like getting used to it. Like I've been doing that maybe a year now, maybe a little over a year, because I think it was before. No, it was in quarantine. I started trying it out. So it's been a year, and like just with certain groups, and I was like, oh, this feels nice. This feels kind of cool. But I'm still very non-binary, so they, them also works.
So for the people that this is maybe perhaps their first time listening in, what does non-binary mean?
So non-binary means I don't identify as as one of the two options in the binary system. So even though I'm trans and I don't identify with the gender I was assigned with at birth, so not female, non-binary says that doesn't mean I automatically default to male. You know, I have feminine and masculine traits. I gravitate to both for different reasons, and I'm just the chaotic pansexual that is here to confuse everyone.
So is non-binary kind of also like gender fluid?
Very similar. Some people who identify as gender fluid also identify as binary. So gender fluid would mean that on any day at any time, I could be more one way, more the other, be anywhere, somewhere flowing on the spectrum. For me personally, the way I looked at it is because I tried for so long to figure out exactly where on the spectrum, which isn't a line, it's more of a wibbly wobbly gloop, where exactly I was.
Yeah.
And I eventually just threw that out and just went, fuck the binary system. I am whatever I'm going to be, whatever.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna flow with what my body and my brain and my heart says, and we'll see where that goes.
And you also mentioned pansexual. What does that mean? What does pansexual mean?
So pansexual and panromantic. I'm here for the pans. It means the things that attract me to people aren't based in gender. I'm sort of attracted to all genders, all presentations, all combinations of gender presentation, gonad sexual secondary characteristics. So like penises, vaginas, unambiguous genitalia, any combination of that with a person, it doesn't make any difference to me, which was of all my queer experience, that was the most heartbreaking to me, because Disney and teen heartthrob movies, coming of age movies, told me that one day I would have this big white light moment where I would be like, ah, yes, men are so sexy, or gosh, women are wonderful. And I kept waiting for my Disney moment, and it never came. I was just like, oh, they're hot. Oh, they're hot.
Yeah.
Oh, they're hot. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's the person themselves, their energy, they're passionate about.
So that's
passion that gets me.
So when I hear pansexual and I hear other people talk about it, that's most likely what they mean by it as well. Like the way I'm understanding pansexual, it's kind of like you just like human beings, right?
Yeah. It's just the human being.
Maybe
itself,
they should change it to being sexual.
Right. Ooh, I like that. It reminds me of a sci-fi TV show, Being Human, being sexual.
Yeah.
And then I would stop getting the jokes of like, I didn't come out of the closet. I came out of the kitchen with the other pans. I say
I
that.
like
I'm
that.
here for the dad jokes so much,
I
though. So
like
it's
that.
like,
I
I
like
would have to give up my jokes.
it. No, never give up dad jokes. Never.
Right. I told my trans team when I was first going in, they're like, so why are you transitioning? And I said, to make my dad jokes more authentic. And no one appreciated my humor. And I was like, my comedic gold is lost on you people.
Wait,
How
what do you mean
dare
your
you?
trans team? You've got trans friends, a bunch of trans friends?
Yes, that too. But also when I'm transitioning, for example, through the Kaiser medical system. So I have
Okay.
an LCSW who's running point on my team, my endocrinologist, my surgeon, who I've only talked to like for a heartbeat, and like all the other people who I've had to talk through. Oh, my psychiatrist, my primary care physician, like all the people who are on my team who are rooting for me to transition. They always ask the same questions. Why are you transitioning? Why do you feel this way? Yada, yada, yada. And these were the jokes I told them. And they were like, okay, but seriously. And I'm like, wasn't that good enough for you?
It is to me. So then tell our audience when you first came out as transgender.
The first time I came out 3 times as transgender.
Wow.
So coming, people can run back in the closet, and I just want to say that's very valid. It's not the end of your story, it's a pause. So the first time I came out was in 2008. I thinking back, I had like just turned 21, and I came out to my sister and my then best friend, and they both had interesting reactions, which I love. Who did I come out to? I think I came out to my best friend first. And she said, well, that explains the anal sex. I was like, thank you. Sure. And I came out to my sister, and she said, well, that explains the musical theater. I was like, not wrong.
Right.
And that was very welcoming and affirming. However, my whole circle of friends and family at that time, well, not family, I have queer members in my family, but immediate family who's in my city and in my vicinity, everyone was cis, heteronormative. No one was really queer. So I was, the token queer person in my group, which I was fine with, but also it didn't give me the support system I needed. I didn't have someone who I could just say, man, I'm feeling this way, and they would get it. Mm-hmm. And so and it wasn't some lack of trying on their.
What does this way mean? How are you feeling?
This just having and exploring the trans experience. I didn't have queer or gay friends. So it was just, I had no one to explore it with, to talk about it with, to connect with about it, to ask questions about it. And so I just got tired of being the token person, and it's just exhausting. And so I from lack of family and friend support, I went back in the closet, not because of anything they really did wrong, but just because it was hard being, standing there alone on that hill. And then I came out a few years later in 2013 because I did have that support. I did have a queer community.
So wait a minute. First you came out in 2008 and then again in 2017?
2013.
Okay. So you waited like 6 years?
I waited, so about 6 years until I had that group. I was dating queer people. I had queer friends. I wasn't alone anymore. And I had come out as pansexual by that point, and was in relationship with a non-binary woman, and I felt comfortable coming out. And that experience was sadly negative. And we can get into that story if you want.
Yeah, tell us.
But it was a post-coital moment, and it was I'm on cloud nine because I'm sitting here going, we are two people who are assigned female at birth, who both identify as somewhere on the non-binary trans spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, wow, we are gay sex on top of gay sex. Like, it doesn't
wow,
get,
that's true. I didn't think of it that way. That's so true.
And
Wow.
so I think this is I'm having this wonderful, beautiful connection with this beautiful soul, and I feel so open and free about it. And I think it's funny that we're the gayest sex anyone could have at that point. Like, I don't think you can triple down on the gay right there.
Right.
And I say, and this wasn't the first time I had told them about it, but I was just very blunt, like, about it. And she turned to me and she said, "You're not trans. You're just confused."
That's
hurtful. And shut me down. She said, "I know trans people. I work and have worked in the trans and queer community, and you're not trans. You don't know what you are yet, but you're not trans." And I went from cloud nine to heartbroken.
That's easy to destroy your heart, for sure. Oh yeah, within seconds.
For sure. Within seconds. It was hard. It was hard. Yeah. And later on, that was also around the same time I got sober. Because guess what? If you repress yourself, you may develop drug and alcohol addiction.
Oh yeah, for sure. Repression equals addiction, for sure.
Exactly. Well, because what's addiction but a shame cycle over and over and over again? So who the hell knew?
Right.
And I started going to AA meetings with other trans people, but they were all binary system trans people. And I didn't have the words for trans non-binary. I had never heard of non-binary by this point. And so I remember going to a group where there was another trans person who's well known in the community. And I remember turning to them before a meeting and I said, "Hey, can I talk to you about the trans experience afterwards?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure." And I said, "Because I have these feelings of when I present more feminine and wear more feminine clothing, I'm in touch more with my masculine side. But when I'm in masculine clothing, I feel more in touch with my feminine side. And it's so weird." And I was just searching, very sweetly searching for words to explain my experience. And she didn't understand that, which is fine. We're all on our own journeys. But the way she handled it was she stopped talking to me. As in, I would start talking to her and she would turn her back on me and pretend I wasn't there, like very high school things. And so it was now finally being in the queer community and not having support there because I didn't fit specifically binary standards. Or for my girlfriend at the time, I think looking back and overanalyzing it, as a future therapist is wont to do, especially a future Jewish therapist, oh my God, is I think it had nothing to do with my identity, but my identity threatened their own self-identities, either as a trans woman who strictly saw their transition as from male to female, and that was the end of their story, and as someone who very much identified as lesbian. Mm-hmm. So if here I come out and I say I'm something different, that messes with how they see themselves. And we all go into protective modes when we do that. Right.
Yeah. People project. Yes.
And that happens. That's human. And then in 2018, about when I met you, I was just like, I am so done being in the closet. I'm coming out this time. And if people don't like it, they can F off. Yeah. This is who I am. And I just stayed out. And I lost some people in my life. More people for whom I love gravitated to me. And it was just, the world was aligning. I had my support. I found more support. And I just stayed out through through hell or high water, I was staying out of the closet, and I have since so far.
And so you started how many days ago?
I started which part? How many days ago?
Testosterone.
Oh, testosterone. Yeah. So I started at mid-pandemic. I had my epiphany to make the decision to medically transition, which you're actually a part of.
Oh, thank you.
Which
Tell me about your epiphany.
Well, so I knew I was trans. I come out, I said it, I'm using they, them pronouns. I wasn't going to hide who I was, but I still dress very femme because at the end of the day, I want to dress to look hot, and I look damn good in a dress. I look damn fine.
You do.
And thank you. And we were at a birthday dinner for our friend Jade, and I swear to God, she set this up.
I remember.
Oh yeah, my hat's somewhere around here. That's like my signature hat. I love me a good pork pie hat. And she just went, MAK. And I'm like, yes, Jade. She's like, here are my friends Lino and Mixie. And I'm like, oh, hi guys, what's up? They're trans. You should talk. And I was just like, part of me was like, oh, you called me out here, but also I like what you did. Okay. And I'm staring at the wonderfulness and the beautifulness that was you and Mixie, two people who had been medically transitioned for years at that point.
Yes.
And it wasn't so much that you two were two passing individuals, but you were two people who were obviously not at the beginning of your journey. But the thing that caught me was, oh, I'm getting teary-eyed just talking about it.
It's okay.
You were so comfortable in your bodies.
Yeah.
And you were so at ease.
Yeah.
And I spent, thank God that restaurant was sort of dingy, and you guys, hopefully if you saw, you didn't comment, I was either tearing up the whole time or I had actual tears streaming down my face.
Wow.
Because I was like, I could have this. I could be this comfortable. What's stopping me? And at that point, I didn't have an answer yet, but I had the question finally. And I was just like, that was when I noticed I'm afraid of transitioning. And before I had other reasons, I have other mental health, I have ADD and clinical depression. So yes, I have other mental health difficulties. But I have other physical health difficulties that could have made transitioning difficult. And it's something with my medical team I talk about. But I used that as an excuse to mask the real fear.
What was the real fear?
It's what other people would think.
Isn't that ridiculous how we base our greatest fears on what other people think, and they're too busy thinking about what people are thinking about them?
Exactly. It's so beautiful.
We psych ourselves out.
Oh yeah. Making sure I drink honey because my throat the last 2 months has been cracking like the bar mitzvah boy realness I've always been jealous of. So I'm trying to stay here and make sure suddenly my voice doesn't go up here. But also I'm getting so verklempt. Yeah, it wasn't until we were quarantined and I was stuck with myself in the house without any outside contact. And I realized, honey, what are you afraid of? Like, what's stopping you? Other people. Well, look, now you've been removed for 6 months from other people.
Yeah. So now what?
Now what? Now what's holding you back? Really? You're sitting here alone in sweatpants, which is a damn shame once quarantine ends. I love living in sweatpants. They are so comfy. I never want to wear a bra again. Who does? Be honest. No one wants to wear a bra. Unless we're running a marathon, no one wants to wear a bra. And I'm sitting here going like, I'm uncomfortable in my own body. And at the end of the day, if you look back on your whole existence, there's only one person you have to be best friends with in your whole life. Everyone else can go screw themselves.
Right.
And that's yourself. Because no one's going to go through the same exact pains as your own self. No one's going to be there. If you've ever been in an accident alone and you're sitting there going, what the hell did I do? It's you, yourself, and I. It's that little trio right there.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'm sitting here uncomfortable in this body, trying to impress
Who?
And I finally contacted my psychiatrist and my primary care physician, who both of them were ready for me to transition before I was. When I came out to them, I was trans. They were like, well, do you want me to send you over to the trans team? We have an excellent trans team here at Kaiser. We're ready. And I was like, I'm not ready yet. I was like, I just want to change my pronouns. I'm not there yet. So once I contacted them, and I was just like, it's go time. They were like, okay, we are putting the referrals in now. I'm so proud of you. Yeah. Fantastic. But having two people who are just saying, whatever you want to do, we're going to be here to support you and get you the care you need. It's been amazing. And so I've been on testosterone for a little over 90 days, so 3 months.
So what kind of changes have you seen already in 3 months?
Way more than I thought I would. Way more. I also at the same time feel like I'm transitioning even faster into my mother, which is weird. So like I have, you know, those little like white hairs everyone gets where you wake up in the morning and you suddenly have a little white hair under your eye and it's 3 inches long. It wasn't there when you went to bed. So I suddenly got those all over my cheeks. And I was like, okay. Or when my hair started growing above my lip, I was like, oh, my mustache is coming in. And then I was like, honey, you had that before you transitioned. Like, that's not new. I was like, fair. And my skin changed. My skin is completely different. I used to have just combination sensitive skin. Now it's just angry. It's a hostage negotiation. It's everywhere. I'm preparing for hair. I looked at my dad and I was like, Dad, do you have hair on your chest and your back? And he's like, yeah, I'm Jewish. And I said, okay. And I notice now that's everywhere. I'm getting acne, so that's new. I have
it's a puberty all over again.
It's puberty I didn't realize I was jealous of when I was a teenager. It wasn't until it started happening and I started it. That was my first experience of trans euphoria, of like, I'm excited for these changes, which is funny because when you transition, they warn you, now things are going to change. They're like, you're going to develop acne. Honey, I'm a pimple popper. I'm here for this. You're going to develop, right? I was just like, I was like, oh no, more to pop.
Yeah.
You're going to experience bottom growth. Honey, it's not like men can find the clitoris anyway. This is helping people along. This is, I was like, try and scare me with something like I won't like. I found hair on the tops of, I'm very white. And so I never had like real hair develop above my calves. Like it was that white, clear, blondish hair you can't really see. Yeah. I now have hair above my knees and I'm like, oh, this is fascinating. That's a hair from my black lab. Okay, that one's too long. But like, this is me. I have hair on my stomach now. And I was like, look at me. I'm turning into a baby bear. This is cute.
Hey, you mentioned your dad. How did you come out to your parents? Oh man, that's always a different story, right? It's always totally different. Oh man,
I didn't mean to go into like the Ursula cackle, but here we are.
Yeah,
it's been a slow and steady experience. It has been an experience in patience, love, and understanding. And an experience in setting and sticking to, or trying to stick to, boundaries. It's, my parents are it's twofold. So, as I said, I'm not the first queer person in my family, not even in this generation, you know, and so, and they're super accepting of all my family members, and it's great. But there's also the point of I'm their own child, like, and I'm their oldest. And I was a miracle baby at the time. And a lot of, I'm guessing, I'm probably projecting, a lot of their story, especially my formative years, is tied up in me being a daughter. So having to disconnect their own identity from their projections and their hopes and their dreams onto me is an experience for them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so my first few years of coming out, they handled it. Actually, they handled it pretty similar to the way when I came out as bisexual before I learned about the word pansexual.
Mm-hmm.
I came out in high school as bisexual, and they had pretty much the same experience there. My mom said was like, "That's nice, honey, but this is just a phase. Talk to me again in 6 months." And then spent the next few years going like, "Oh, you're dating someone new. Are they a boy? Because boys are great. Boys are this." And she was that way
Yeah.
until I brought that wonderful girlfriend home, and she was just like, "Oh, you know what? Now I don't care who you date as long as they make you happy, as
Oh,
long as they're good for you." And so I was like,
that's
"Okay." So it
great.
wasn't until I brought someone home, she was like, "Oh, now I see it." So those
Yeah.
6 years, it took 6 years of getting there, but we got there.
Okay,
And my
good.
and my dad did, and this is my first experience actually looking back of like man to man connection. We sat down next to each other, not looking at each other in the dark, staring straight ahead, which I'm noticing is very the male experience. We're not going to look at each other. We're going to stare straight ahead and talk
Yeah.
about our feelings.
Yeah, totally.
And he was like, "I want you to know some people aren't going to like you for being bisexual."
Hmm.
And me, I didn't tell him this, but I was like, "I'm on OkCupid, and a lot of people seem to be into that." But I
Yeah,
was
they
like,
do.
"I think I'm gonna be okay."
Yeah, right. Those are
Like I
just
was a
his fears.
unicorn for a few years, so I was like, "I'll be fine."
Right.
And he was just like, "I just want you to prepare for yourself for that because the world may not accept that." And so he was practical, like, just be safe. And I was like, "That's fine." So when I came out as trans, sort of the same reaction. My mom was like, "Well, this is just going to be a phase." And I'm like, "Mom, this is a phase that's been going on since I was like 3, 5, 6 years old."
Yeah.
I think the cis part was the phase. Just
Right, right, right.
throwing it out
I
there,
agree. I agree.
right? Like we all go
Yeah,
through our cis phase.
totally.
And my dad was just sort of like, "Huh, okay, well, if that's the way you feel, be safe." But they struggle with, for example, they struggle really hard with pronouns. And I
Yeah.
think it's
Could be the
because
generation too, because my family still struggles.
exactly, right? And a lot of it is we've had a lot of talks from it, and it's being boomers. They're boomers.
It is.
But they're not okay boomers. I'm very proud of them.
Yeah, they
They're
seem,
progressive enough not to be okay boomers.
yeah, that's great.
But they ask a lot of I'm glad that they ask a lot of questions. For being out and queer for a number of years now, I'm sort of immune. I've become immune to stupid questions. So I was like, "Please ask me your questions. Don't be afraid that if they're ignorant or whatnot,
Hmm.
they won't
Yeah,
hurt me."
there's never a stupid question because if they don't, that means that there's a gap there.
Exactly. And so I had so much fun a few weeks ago. I had my mom on one phone and her best friend, my Aunt Nancy, on the other phone. And we were on a 3-person call because one called the house phone, one called the cell phone. And I put everyone on speakerphone and they're just asking me questions about like, what does this mean? And I'd say like, here's the answer to your question. Also, here's how you want to
What
phrase it
kinds
in the
of questions
future.
were they asking you?
Questions, basically questions differentiating between transgender and intersex and uh, romantic and sexual attraction versus transgender, using terms such as transgender versus transsexual versus tranny versus he, she. And I'm like, so here's why we don't use these words anymore. Here's why we use this word now. Intersex is different. However, they're still a very important part of our LGBT plus community. And then they wanted to know, well, what's the plus? And I'm like, thank you for asking. It's the premium subscription. There's so many letters in the alphabet mafia. We're like, here's a plus, add them in. And
Yeah.
so I started trying to create, it's so slow because I'm still learning to edit. But a TikTok platform where I ask these questions because I'm not afraid of ignorant questions anymore. Like they don't faze me. Like I won't name who, but like a friend of mine who's younger who my mom asked a very simple question. They're bisexual, and so my mom asked like, well, can you be they're bisexual and their partner is bisexual. And my mom said, well, can you two be faithful and monogamous to each other if you're both bisexual? And they were hurt. They blew their lid. They didn't want to talk to my mom for a while. It was really harmful. And I sat my
Why
mom
is that
down.
a harmful question?
Well, because them being the baby queer that they are, you know, these new questions can still hurt a chord. And as someone who they were still newly out as bisexual, remember, it's also those are the same questions that people will ask from a bigoted perspective. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure I agree with that. I think it really depends on how you feel, how the conversation is being felt, because I've often asked myself that question, you know? So I've asked myself that question about myself. So
exactly. But you see how it's like the spirit coming in, and it's just like I could tell, I felt my mom's spirit. She was asking a simple question, asking for it. But the way my friends took it because they were so new and in their bisexual identity hadn't had a same-sex relationship yet. Only heteronormative ones. So, you know, feeling that invalidation, feeling that, getting biphobia from a lot of other places, for them, it hurt. And that's okay. If that's where someone is at in their experience, that's fine. But that's when I say, Mother dear, come to me. I will break this down for you. And I explain the difference.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you pointed something out. You said biphobia. I noticed there's a lot of like biphobia, or just people that assume that if you're bisexual, you cannot be in a monogamous relationship. I feel like that assumption is real.
Oh, it very much is. And it's something that exactly is what I talked to my mom about. For example, this friend is super monogamous. Like, they're monogamous to their bone. They did long distance monogamy for 3 years. Me being the polyamorous relationship anarchist that I am, can't fathom that. I'm like, you go boo boo, and you do monogamy and you make it work. Why? I don't understand, but that I don't need to understand. That's you. And separating the fact that relationship style and relationship sexual orientation are two different things, and also separating out that like any relationship is one on communication. So if someone is feeling that way, as you were saying, like as a bisexual person and as me as a pansexual person, if we were to be in a monogamous relationship with someone, and do we, you know, there's that question of like, well, what if we crave being with another gender? What if we crave experiences that we're missing? And a lot of that comes down to basically the foundational facts of what we look at as a relationship style. So it comes down to, is it, even if
it also depends on how happy you are with yourself, because if you feel fulfilled and you have peace within your own heart, and you know that you're this way, it's going to be that way because you trust yourself.
Exactly, you trust yourself. Here's a flip side question: say bisexual and pansexual people can't be monogamous because they crave the adventure they are somehow missing. Wouldn't that then mean that straight people are always monogamous and never cheat?
Hypothetically, yes.
I was like,
hypothetically, that's the way you would think it is, but that's not true.
But it's not true. So it's, you have to separate in your mind cheating, people who are made for monogamous relationships, people who aren't, people who cheat on for various reasons. I highly recommend all readings. Yeah, exactly. All readings and all podcasts by oh, what is her name? I love her. Esther Perel. Oh, Esther Perel.
Esther Perel. I'll have to check her out.
Please do. She's
She talks
absolutely
about this.
fascinating, and she's one of the leading researchers into why people cheat, and has a book, Mating in Captivity and whatnot. And the insights and case studies she's done are absolutely fascinating. And it shows that whether someone is gay, straight, pansexual, bisexual, omnisexual, polysexual, whatever it is.
Those cheaters are searching for an external happiness, and that's not going to exist. You know, even if you cheat, it's just going to continue going and going. It's an addiction. It really is.
It really is. It's trying to satisfy some inner portion of ourselves, some inner child, some inner wound, something we're missing with an external solution.
Right.
And that hits everyone equally.
Mm-hmm.
That's like saying that would be like saying cancer or addiction only affects cisgender white men. No, we see it across everyone. Sure. Walk into any AA room, you're like, there is definitely a mix of people and ages here.
Oh yeah.
Same thing. And so being able to field those types of questions, I'm trying to make myself an opportunity for people. I was like, if you have questions and you're afraid to ask them, use me as a sounding board. You can't offend me.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. So Mac, what kind of advice could you give our audience for those who are not sure what side they want to swing on, or whether or not they're bi or straight or trans, or what kind of advice can you give somebody who's questioning whether or not they should transition? Or both of those questions, actually, or all of those questions, if you can.
Sure. I'm ADD. I got you. So one, look at your stability, your financial stability. As someone who's experienced homelessness, because I was on the outs with my family, and I would have to say, make sure you're in a position where you have some sort of financial security. You have some place where you can live. You have some place where you can get medical treatment. If it is not safe for you to come out yet, that is okay.
You mean coming out as trans, right?
Coming out as trans, yes. Okay, coming out, medically transitioning. Make sure you are safe and able to do so. You can find a community, even if you live in a small town, you can find a community online. I'm a big believer in incognito mode on Google, so it's not in your history chat if you're worried about anyone going through it. And find your support group. I would say, if my experiences have taught me nothing else, it's finding people online and in real life who you can just turn to and go like, man, I got really triggered today when I sat across at dinner at this beautiful man, Lino and Mixie, and they were just living their best lives. And I'm sitting here going, what the hell am I doing? And have someone you can talk about that with. So have that emotional support. Have doctors take the time, and this is hard, take the time to find medical professionals who are on your side, or at least you can ask questions to. There are LGBT centers, for example, here in Los Angeles. There's, I know quite a few people who've transitioned through them just because they felt like they could ask honest questions about like, this is what I'm feeling. Imposter syndrome was a huge part of my transitioning story. Like,
I was like, imposter syndrome.
Maybe I'm not trans. Mm-hmm. Maybe this was part of, I have, and I go to therapy for borderline personality disorder. And I was like, maybe this is just part of the disorder of, I always feel alienated from groups. So maybe I just feel alienated from my gender. I don't feel a connection to that. It could be that. Lo and behold, I get on testosterone, and the most magical thing happened. So much of my depression and suicidal ideation within 2 weeks, I noticed it after 2 weeks, disappeared. Like, it just wasn't there.
It happened to me too. That same thing happened to me. Yeah.
And I was
super depressed. And then when I started transitioning and seeing a hair on my legs, it's like I've like this whole new rebirth, just light lifted up outside my body.
Exactly. It was to me, it was like taking antidepressants all of a sudden. I just
Yeah.
noticed the world was a happier place. I felt comfortable in my own body, in my own still very female presenting body. I somehow felt more comfortable, and I was like, okay, as someone who's who started transitioning at 33, like I'm very grateful. This is the choice. Someone asked me, why didn't you transition? If you could go back in time, I was like, would you transition before you started puberty? Would you transition in your early 20s? All these other times.
Yeah.
And
So that actually leads me to ask you this next question. Right when you said that right now, what kind of advice can you give people or people that are under 18 listening to this
Mhm.
that are questioning whether or not they are transgender, or whether they should transition before they turn 18?
Definitely, if you feel, first off, if you don't feel you have a parent who's going to support you, at least one parent or parental guardian, you can always see if you can try and talk to your primary care physician with your parent outside of the room, and start talking to them about, here's how I feel. What are my options? What are things I can do? If you have at least one parent you can open up to and talk to about it, tell them, these are my feelings. The biggest thing I would say is, each person's transition, I am learning, is very individualistic. So
Yes, always.
so it's a lot of listen to your body, listen to your mind, listen to your heart. So if for example, looking at surgeries for myself for the future, I may or may not get bottom surgery. Ask me again in 3 years. We'll see how I feel then.
Right.
But I will be here for part 2. And because for me, that was something I very much wanted at 13, because for some reason I thought it was totally normal for cis people to think about getting bottom surgery at 13. I should have known way earlier on I was trans. There were a lot of signs. But even though that was important to me at 13, later on in my 20s, that wasn't something that mattered to me. So I was like, okay, that's not what I need. When you have that conversation with your parents, try and start a dialogue of like, here's what I need. Is it dressing a certain way? Is it cutting your hair a certain way? Mm-hmm. Is it starting, not protein, puberty blockers at a certain time? Like, is it starting to try on makeup? Is it starting to change pronouns, paint your nails, present more masculine or more feminine? Have many small conversations about exactly what it is and try things out. I talked to a parent of a trans non-binary child the other day, and they said at first their child cut all their hair, got a more masculine haircut. Mm-hmm. And then a few weeks later, they said, Dad, I think I'm more non-binary. And the dad was like, okay, well, what would make you feel more comfortable?
That's a great question.
Would it be getting a wig? And the kid was like, yeah, I think I want to try a wig, just something smaller. So they got one from Amazon. And so they had their shorter hair, but then they also had a natural looking wig for their longer hair. And they're exploring. For when you're under 18, wonderful. You're supposed to explore.
Yes,
some of us went through a punk phase. Some of us go through various versions of non-binary phases. This is the time to test things out.
Exactly. Wow. Well, this has been an amazing interview. Your energy is profound. It's going to make a mark. And I'm just really excited for your journey, and really, really happy to see how fast you're already changing. And I know that it feels amazing. I've been there. I'm still going through it myself. And I love it.
Did it start this fast for you?
I'm sorry? Did it start this fast for me? I think maybe a little slower, and then I think maybe it was a little slower because I have a genetic disease, and maybe my disease was a little inflamed and wasn't allowing the testosterone to really take an effect.
That happens.
Yeah, so I think maybe that's why I look younger than what I am now, because of that, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's
you
amazing.
Look like baby. You look like baby. This is a good thing. You look like baby. You're fine.
So I mean, you've been super duper brave, and it's really incredible. And it also it actually comforts me meeting someone else that transitioned later in life, because I was 34 and you're 33, and I haven't really met that many people that transitioned later. And just to see your energy and your happiness, it really fulfills my heart. So thank you so much for sharing your love on my show. I'm definitely gonna interview you back soon, because I know your changes are gonna be fast, and I know that you're always willing to talk, which is really amazing. Thanks so much, Mac. How can people find you? Do you have a YouTube? Do you have a Facebook, a Twitter?
I have Instagram and TikTok right now that I'm mostly using. Search up Mac owns a PC. That's Mac with a K, because of copyright issues. No, I'm kidding. I'm always here for the dad pun. But if you look up Mac owns a PC almost anywhere, that's me. And I am going to try and post more consistently. If I get long enough content, I'll try for YouTube as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on my show. Love you so much. You take care.
Thank you for having me. Take care, hon.
Absolutely. Thank you.